something's happening on screen. Okay. Sorry, bear with me. Right, I'm just going to try something. Who can see your messages? Well, clearly no one at the moment. Okay, that's kind of there. Right, this is going to be a little clunky. I apologize for that. What I'm doing is I'm going to put the messages up from chat up on the screen just so people can see them who are just watching the video. Okay. It's fine. I'll try and fix things as I go along. So people have just come in. Apologies. Welcome. Nice to see people. I'm just having a few technical problems. I've got a syncing issue with my audio, which I shall try and fix at some point. Might be, we have to fix it by, we've got the break week, haven't we, next week, so it'll give me a little bit of time to fix all this stuff. Okay, let's get started. So, lovely to see everybody, and, oops. What's all happening here? Right. So, yeah, before we start, the messaging. So there's going to be some, the chat's going to pop up here. So I've just put this, the chat window up on the video so that when people are watching the recording back, they won't be able to see the chat going on, so they can see chat. So bear that in mind. Hello, and it also means I'm paying attention to chat now as well, which is very nice. So nice to see you, Angela. Nice to see you, Louisa. So we'll have chat up there, and so anything you post will be seen by people in the recording. So we're recording just now. I'm just recording my camera feed. I'm not recording your camera feeds. I'll only record the messages that get sent, that include me on them, so message to all, but you can privately chat if you want, and I don't get to see it, and they won't come up on screen. So the video recording is just for people who missed the tutorial, who want to run their own tutorial, and they just see my introduction. I'm not, your audio will get recorded if you speak when we're in the main room, but when we're in the breakout rooms, I'm not recording audio or video. So it's all private in the breakout rooms. Okay, so does that make sense? That kind of that made enough sense. Okay, right. So let's get on to today's topic, shall we? So, first of all, thanks for people who, the assessment. People got their assessment in. So thank you so much for getting your assessment in. Really appreciate that. If you haven't, just make sure you get an extension put in, or just know that you've got late penalties coming. Now, we've got a deadline for marking, which is 2 weeks after the submission date. So it's a little bit of a wait for that. But myself and our marker, Chantel, who's coming in to help me do the marking, we're getting it done. We're working hard, and everything's going fine so far. So if you hang on in there, we should be able to get your marks to you back on time. Now let's get to this week's topic. So this week's topic is mental illness. I'm just going to put the reading up because I'm going to refer, oops, that's the wrong reading. We've got I'll show you on the Edge site. I've got a few things I want to say first before we start off. So mental illness, this is a topic that impacts students more so than the general population. So rates of mental illness in university students is particularly high, probably higher for those taking this unit after being taught by me. But why I'm reminding us of this or telling us of this is that be gentle in the discussion. So we're going to have breakout rooms and discussions. So just be gentle with each other. Make sure you don't disclose anything you don't want to disclose, because there's still a lot of stigma around this stuff. So just make sure you're safe and keep everyone else safe, and just generally be gentle with each other, understanding that there's a fair chance that people in your group will have a diagnosis of some form or another. And we have to be gentle because it's a sensitive topic. But unlike last week, where we were talking about disabled people in a way that still recognized that people were marginalized, so the terminology we used was still recognizing they were marginalized. In this week, there's a risk that by us saying that there's no such thing as mental illness, which is the argument that you're asked to take on board this week, it appears that we're denying people who are in distress. So we need to be really clear. It's not denying that people are experiencing very real problems or very real distress. The argument's not that. The argument is that those problems and that distress, we recognize that people are experiencing problems, they are experiencing distress, but what we're saying is that those problems and that distress is not caused by a medical condition. And that's the argument I want you to take on board this week, that mental illness is a social condition caused by social factors. So depression, schizophrenia, PTSD, and so on, they're not caused by something going wrong in the brain. So they're not mental illnesses in that regard. And that's why I'm saying there's no such thing as mental illness. Now, we aren't doing this as some sort of weird thought experiment. Okay, this is not a pretend argument. We're not just doing it just for effect, just so we can play around. I have to point this out because I get complaints from students about my teaching. I've had them in the past about when I got onto this topic area, or I also get complaints about what I say about Jordan Peterson. But I get complaints about what I say in regards to mental illness. And in the past, I've had, not in this university, in a previous university, staff coming up and say, Paul, I just got, this is embarrassing, I'm really sorry, but I've had students come up to me and they've said that you've said there's no such thing as mental illness. Like, clearly they've misunderstood you. Clearly they misunderstood you. But I just want to let you know that that's what they think you're saying. And of course I say back, no, well, that is what I'm saying. And I get into all sorts of trouble. But this is not opinion, right? This is not me just playing with your minds. This is not an opinion. This argument is based on very strong, robust, hard scientific evidence. Okay, so there's lots of literature, lots of research that backs this up. And that literature does exist, and it's extensive, and it says exactly what I'm saying this week, throughout this week, what I've been saying on the videos. So what you've got to think is, if you've not come across that literature, why haven't you come across it? Not blaming you, but why hasn't anyone shown you that literature? Now, on the Edge site, we've got a couple of key texts I've put up there just for people who, if they want to look this stuff up and find out more about this argument. But I've also put up a document that should alert you that something interesting is going on here, and I'm not just wacko, You put in the complaints if you want, but, I'll just come back and saying, well, I'm sorry that they're ignorant. Because if you look on the Edge site, there's one key document that I've set for today, which is the British Psychological Society Division of Clinical Psychologist Statement on Mental Illness. So this is the professional body, the most powerful body of clinical psychologists in the UK. And this was quite a while ago. It's almost 10 years. I can't remember how long ago. It's quite a while ago. It's maybe 10 years ago. I can't remember the date of it. Where they basically say mental illness is not a biological thing. So they're saying the same thing I'm saying. Okay, so that might convince you that this is actually serious stuff, and we're not just going a bit crazy. We're not mentally ill thinking there's no such thing as mental illness. Which, interestingly, there is a diagnosis called osopagnosia. There's a mental illness category. I think it might have been taken out now, which is the denial of being mentally ill. So if you're diagnosed with schizophrenia, and then you say, I'm not mentally ill, then they'll say, oh, you've also got this other illness, which is a denial of being mentally ill, that you lack awareness of your mental illness. Okay, anyway, moving on. Let's get to the discussion forums, because that's the key thing for today. So what... a couple of things. Now, assessment... Some of you have handed in assessment 1, and I don't want you to be kicking yourself this week, thinking, oh God, we've got this new stuff on mental illness. I wish I could have referred to this in my assessment 1. Don't think that, because assessment 1, you didn't really need to write much about mental illness in that assessment. It was more about the concept of the social self. So 50% of the marks, I hope this is not shocking anyone, but 50% of the marks for assessment 1 was about that section on the concept of the social self. So it wasn't really about, we weren't digging deep into mental illness. It was more at a general level about mainstream psychological approaches to mental health. This week we're taking the deep dive. So nothing from this week was required for the first assessment. So this is the second topic we're covering. So previously, last week it was disability, disabled people. This week, mental illness. And these are 2 of the 4 topics that you have open to. I think it's 4 topics for assessment 3. So this is going to help you with assessment 3. So weeks 8 and weeks 10 is where we have the final 2 topics, sexuality and indigeneity. And that will give you week 10, 11 and 12 to work on the assignment. And you'll get study support in week 12. Week 12 is all dedicated to study support to help you with assessment 3. So you should have plenty of time, but also because you handed in an exam review week. But also, even if you're not talking about mental illness or disability in assessment 3, with the same way of thinking you'll find in those topic areas. So we're using the same sort of way of thinking, same critical way of thinking. So it'll help you, whichever topic you take on. Okay, so... I think we're about ready. Let's just go through I'll get to the agenda. So the agenda is all set to help you with assessment 3. Also, there's some questions in there for your discussion to help you with assessment 2, the diary entry for this week, if you want to submit that diary entry. So let's see if this works. So just, Paul, what are you doing today? I need to lie down. Does everyone else need a break? Are you going to get a break next week? Is that just, no, it's just teachers have a break and we just carry on. Okay. All right. I won't mention the break. I hope you get a bit of you'll get a break from me anyway. That's something. Okay. So if you go down to week 5, you get the agenda and stuff there. So all the materials for week 5 are there. And there's the reading there that I just referred to. I know you can't see, it's too small. But it's for the video, really. And there's our agenda there. So let's start off by going through the rules. I know you know this stuff by now, and it's probably you don't really need it. But say it anyway, just in case someone missed it and it's new to our tutorial. So everyone, cameras on, because that helps us with engagement, except if your internet is dreadful and something's still embarrassing going on in the background. Your job, talk and listen, be engaged. My role, facilitate, listen, keep to time, and to try not to talk too much, which clearly I'm failing at already. So that's the rules, and let's get to the important bit. Oh, let me post that in chat as well. Here we go. Oh. Right, rules are up in chat, and here comes the agenda up in chat. And the agenda is question 1. This is an abbreviated version just up on the blackboard here. What's the social and cultural context of our understanding of mental illness? So that's the first thing I want you to discuss in the small breakout room. So what is it about Australian culture that makes us believe in the concept of mental illness and believe that it's appropriate to treat that illness with medicines? I don't know if you know this, but apart from Iceland is the country that has the most prescriptions for antidepressants. More people than anywhere else are on antidepressants in Iceland, and we're number 2 in Australia. UK's number 4. I can't remember who's number 3, but a lot of people take antidepressants. I think it's 1 in 7 at the moment, they've calculated. So we are highly medicated in Australia. So I want you to talk through that. And then the second question, what are the vested interests behind mainstream psychological approaches that ask us to believe in this concept of mental illness? You know, why do I keep getting into trouble every time I try to tell people there isn't such a thing? Why might you get into trouble if you use these arguments? Robbie's thinking, yeah, I know about getting into trouble. So, you know, so talk that through. And that's, oh, there's chat working, kind of. So I'll put us in the breakout rooms and just the usual sort of things to think about. When you go in the breakout room, it's just a random thing. I'll put you in the room and just remember the number of the room, just in case your internet drops out and you have to log back into Zoom, and then you're going back into this room. Nobody will be here. And then I'll just place you back into your Zoom room. Just message me in chat if I take a while to get to you. You know, I'll be in another room and I'll try and get to you as soon as I can. When you're in your room, I'll pop in and out kind of randomly in the rude way that I do and try not to speak. And I know someone will just try and tempt me into the conversation, but, you know, I'll try not to speak. If you are in trouble in your group and you want me in your group, just message in chat, direct message to me in chat, and I'll come to your group as soon as I can. And what I'd like us to do is have about 25 minutes in small groups and then come back for 10 minutes at the end for a bigger group discussion. And we'll stop making sense at 10 to the hour to give people a break. And yeah, that's our agenda. Are we all good? Are we good to go? We're good to go. Right. So, given the day I'm having, it's only 10 o'clock. How can the day go downhill? So, you're the highlight, by the way. This is not the downhill bit, talking to you. It's just everything is going wrong. So what are the chances of me getting this right with the breakout rooms? Oh. 4 to 5 participants a room, sound good? Wow, look at that. Never done it faster in my life. I'll see you soon. Oh, nothing's happened, has it? Oh, yes, it has happened. Cool. Fantastic. Okay. So I think it's recording this week. The groups, there was some great discussion going on in the groups. Now, we're gone a little short on time, so I'll record this discussion. We'll keep the discussion going up. I hate to do this because I know some people have to feel pressure because they have to get to the methods unit, which is starting at 11. So we'll go to 11, but do just duck out because we understand you just need to have a bit of a break and get yourself set up for the next methods unit. Just before we start to open up discussion, just want to give a little bit of advice for this week, which is not to get bogged down in whether it's true or not, this thing about me saying there's no such thing as mental illness and other people saying it. Don't get bogged down in, oh, but there's this argument, but there's that argument. What I want you to do is to interrogate why it is that you're being asked to believe this thing to be true. And what I mean by that is that you're being asked to believe that mental illness is a biological thing. So that's the question. It's not whether is it a biological thing. I don't want you to get into that, because you'll find people who say it is, and then I'll show you people who say it isn't, and then you'll just go, oh, what the hell, they're all crazy. So you'll never get anywhere with that. So I want you to stay away from deciding whether it is or isn't, but just ask yourself the question, why is it that people ask me to believe that it is a biological thing? So let's open the floor. We're a nice smallish group this time, which is good. So open the floor and see what people have got to say.
I think control probably springs to mind. So just for a motive behind it, I think I see that with so many ways that psychology shifts. So a good example, I know it gets overused, but is the homosexuality thing, when it was a disorder before. Society changed its perspective all of a sudden. It's very controversial now. It is going to be eradicated, I believe. That's going. So it could be, as Emma says a lot, that it is a form of social control. And I think if you doubt something or critique something that people may have a vested interest in you not critiquing, then it's in their interest to suggest that you're just nuts and to attack you personally instead of the premise of your argument, which is that logical fallacy again. But it's a powerful tool because a lot of people who probably aren't trained or unable naturally to critically think, it sounds plausible because that appeal to authority has some leverage. So I think that's one. But I struggle to sort of connect other bits to that. I think that's pretty much it for me. And money, greed, and all the other human tools.
Thanks, Rob. Yeah.
I think another thing is that we don't want to address social issues involved with it. Like we don't, like we want to just keep thinking it's something medically with the person. We don't want to face the fact that there's a big social issue that it might be involved all around us, because as I said with my group, there's still an implicit stigma involved with mental illness and facing distress, even though there's a lot of people that have it, and we don't want to associate it with something that might be in our lives or our social environment. We want to keep it separate in someone else's medical issue, which we want to just keep going the way we are with give these people some drugs that will help them, not see how we can help them with their social environment or the social inequalities. And my voice is not, so I'll be quiet now.
It makes a really good point, and excellent point. Angela, this goes for other people as well. You can also use chat if you want to. You can post things to spark off people's discussion in chat. But I think, both you and Robin made some really good points there.
Can I just add to what Angela said too? Because I think a lot about, like, similarly with her line of thought. I think sometimes too, like, there's bigger issues take more effort to solve. So in part, I feel like it's just laziness. You know, like, there's this big issue over here, but I don't quite know how to tackle that. So I'll just do this thing that's kind of easier and band-aids it. It's kind of the solution for the short term, but actually I'm just going to pretend that thing is not over there because I'm not really sure what to do with it.
It's like wicked problems, Michaela, isn't it? You know, they're so multifaceted and huge and big, and how do we actually tackle it? How do we even start to address it?
There's one interesting, like if I put it quite simplistically, you might get like some of these problems are seen as huge, intractable, and unsolvable. Most of it's down to social inequality, like as Angela's saying. I mean, most of our problems can be done by reducing the gap between the rich and the poor. That's been associated with most of our problems. So if you say, oh, we found that mental illness is linked and it is, to social inequality, so what we're going to have to do is tax rich people and increase the benefits for poor people. Imagine the group of people sitting there who go, okay, we could do that, or we could just medicate the poor people and not tax us so much. I wonder which one we should do.
Like saying that someone else's problem is someone else's benefit.
Yes.
And keep in mind that, like, the doctors, they're probably higher, like they're probably a bit richer as well, so they'd be benefiting from just medicating people rather than paying more taxes. Like, they'd be sitting there winning, basically.
I think the doctors are also trained by pharmaceutical companies as well. There's ties in that too. So that you would say there has to be a proclivity towards prescribing things. Maybe every time you go to the doctor, they want to give you something.
I mean, doctors get huge perks for prescribing medication. enormous.
But is it also easier? I know there's like the common saying that doctors are incredibly overworked and they could see 25 to 30 patients in a day, and like you can't help all those people like for an extended amount of time. It might just be easier to give out a pill, but then are you going against what you believe in, like helping people?
Yeah, kind of pumping them through the door. I know what you mean. They come in, they've got a problem, give them a Band-Aid and throw them back out there. It could be it. I think Angela's got a point too, and she was talking about that in relation to wanting to distance ourselves from it too. So if there's somebody that does something or behaves in a certain way that we may understand ourselves that we mimic or resemble, then we need to classify that as something to at least lie to ourselves that we are not that person. So it helps us to avoid dealing with our dark sides or problematic behaviours as well. So that person's mad, I'm not. You know.
I think with that that thing with the doctors, I think the education needs to be increased, or just new education needs to be put towards, I guess, how Australian culture stance is on how the doctors kind of thing works. Because if they're just pumping through, just giving out pills everywhere they can, I guess, because they're trying to see everyone or as many people as they can, it's just a cycle. They're going to come back because, as Paul was saying in our group, that if you give someone a pill and tell them they've got something when they don't, it's most likely going to lead that they will get that thing in the end. So they're just going to come back, keep seeing the same doctors, and it's just going to cause more issues. So if they kind of change how everything works, maybe slow down and take that extra time, they may not see them come back again.
Yeah, I think the model of medical delivery has to change, because obviously, you know, doctors' clinics are working to KPIs, you know, how many people are we seeing in a day, you know, appointment times are short. You know, that whole mindset's got to change. You know, medical professionals really need longer time frames with people to actually talk about the whole person and their, you know, the holistic problems, you know, not 10 minutes to, you know, chat about, you know, problems that are just so much bigger than that, you know.
I think too, like there's like, you know, the funding with what like they can look into, you know what I mean? Like what they can actually test for that then the government pays for. So, you know, to help you out, kind of, they're probably not going to go, oh, I'll get you all this testing done because it's going to cost you so much. So they're just going to go, well, do the testing that is rebated and you don't have to pay for. But that testing might not actually be figuring out what actually the problem is. You know, like they could be doing more extensive testing, but, you know, you can't, it costs a lot. So then it's like, okay, well, I'll just go within the ramifications of what I can, and they might not find anything. It doesn't mean it's not there. It just means it's been delved in, you know.
That scope's too narrow, isn't it?
Just wonder if we could, I just wonder if we could, I mean, doctors are, I think they absolutely need to be criticised because some of the practice is absolutely appalling, even though they're overworked, but they get paid pretty decent pay. But I think what they do is absolutely appalling in terms of how they don't keep up. Anyway, I think all of the criticism against doctors is valid, but there's how about a harder target to focus on, which are charities that tackle stigma around mental illness. Can you see how they might actually be the bad guys?
Yeah, because
They make money from there being a mental illness, right?
I'll tell you how they're described by a lot of these charities actually get huge funding from the drug companies, and the drug companies refer to them as their ground troops. So they go around saying, look, depression is nothing you should be ashamed about. Sorry, go on, Lisa.
Sorry, no, just charities can you give me an example of a charity that you're talking about?
Oh, I'll have to look that up again.
Sorry, yeah.
No, I'll check that out for you again, because because it's been a while since I looked at that. And if I don't get it in chat, I'm Googling. If I don't get it to you in chat, I'll put it up on Moodle.
Yeah.
Don't too I don't mean this to sound the wrong way, but charity is kind of creating, and by having a charity around a certain mental illness, isn't it then just perpetuating this idea that like they need our help because they're not like us and they can't do stuff, they're dependent, so it's kind of just like perpetuating the stigma in some ways.
Yes.
I think they're doing something that we all could do anyway. I don't think there's a need for it. I think if you see somebody who's down and out, and you go and talk to them. If you see somebody that needs a hand up, you lift them up. That's the old age shift of this country anyway, of Australia. So I think that when that happens, you end up with one organisation that tries to be the mother of everything. I don't think there's a need for it. And then of course you typically don't gain. Well, it depends what sort of altruism you assign to it. It might be personal satisfaction or something through helping somebody, but these organisations, there's no doubt that they gain through monetary privilege. So I don't think there's any need for them really if we just behaved appropriately.
If only we all would, Robbie.
I think too, though, this also to me comes back to this thing of like inequality, right? Because I live in Noosa, it's full of rich white people. I don't see many people on the street. So I don't have the opportunity to help many people because they're not there in front of my face. Like, I feel like, I don't know if this is just me or humans in general, but when it's like right there in front of you, it's easier to go like, oh, are you okay? Like, do you need a help? Do you need a lift? Do you need something? Whereas like, if it's not in front of you, then like right now, because of where I live, I don't have many opportunities to like do what Robbie's doing. And then the people who are under-resourced are all together and they don't have the resources to help each other. So it kind of comes back to inequality again. If we had more mixed people who had more resources and people who had less together, then maybe there'd be more opportunities for like us. Well, I don't know where everyone is, but we're all educated. So I all see us as kind of, most of us look kind of white and privileged, no offense. But yeah, like more opportunities for us to help.
Yeah, I don't know if it's so much the money thrown at it, but maybe the time, and which kind of gives some weight to the argument Paul made before about the hairdressers. I don't know I guess if everyone had a hairdresser that wasn't actually doing their hair, there might be some evidence that would be helpful. So I don't know if we've got to throw money at it. So I think the organisations come at it from that perspective. Give me money, and I will fix the problem. But money kind of is the cause of the problem in some way. So perhaps it's not that. Perhaps it's departing from humanity that's the problem.
Hairdressers, in their role, they're providing a service, but during that service, they're also able to talk to people. And we all need more time to be able to talk to people, don't we? If we had more time and we're able to talk to those around us, wouldn't we all be a lot better off?
I feel better and worse after these conversations. So yeah, there's something to that. Better because it's a good social interaction, and worse because it makes you bloody think and somewhat disapprove of yourself.
Yes.
There's this wonderful, one of my favourite studies ever was where some research, people forget about the therapeutic effect of research, qualitative. I'd like to push my qualitative methods every opportunity. There's a group of researchers who wanted to look at the effectiveness of marriage counselling. So what they'd do is they'd wait outside, a couple would go in, get marriage counselling, the couple would come out and the researcher would interview them about how it went. And one of the findings of the study was that couples found the chat with the researcher to be more therapeutic than the chat with the counsellor. And it's just because the researcher was just interested in their experience, and they really had the opportunity to talk without feeling judged or that they were going to get advised that they have to do X, Y, and Z. They just wanted someone to talk to. And a researcher, a qualitative researcher, a good one, is one of those people that you can just talk to and open up to and not worry about anything bad happening to you if they're an ethical researcher. And so it's just...
I feel I need to disclose that I was a hairdresser, 20 odd years ago. Yes. So it's very true. I was a hairdresser for 11 years, and in that time had some wonderful conversations and relationships with clients. So I can vouch, and I feel I need to disclose that to the group.
You've got a vested interest in the argument.
I agree. I agree wholeheartedly.
It's true, isn't it? So unrecognized, but so true. And it's a simple, as Robbie's saying, money's always the issue, but actually it's identifying natural support givers. There are loads of people out there in the community who, by virtue of who they are and what they do, offer psychological support to people, but it's never described as that. But they're extremely effective. And it doesn't take a shift of money. Okay, it could be exploitative if you're not careful. It's just a shift of recognition. Mm. If we can recognize that actually, if you're feeling glum, go get your hair done, because actually it can really make a difference. It can give you as much of a lift as popping an antidepressant.
Mm. And I agree. Sorry, I just wanted to say quickly, I agree completely about, sometimes going to, seeing a professional, there is that power imbalance, but going to the hairdresser, there's, you feel as though you can communicate. There's not the expectation that they're going to make you mentally well, but, having the conversations, being able to share those things that you can share, makes all the difference.
It's almost like if our psychology training was transferred from higher education into vet, we could be more effective. That's that kind of argument that because hairdressers are largely don't have that much power. Mine does, because I fear what she's going to do every time I go in. I don't go in that often, but it's because they're professional, but they're not that professional as in had extensive period of academic higher education training, because they're seen as part of vet, which is always seen as
the lower educated.
Yeah, lower, less prestigious, but it's exactly what you need it's exactly what you need in those situations where having power over someone interferes with that therapeutic relationship. And also, most people who need psychological support are people who lack power. It's mostly poor people. Rich people, have their problems, but not to the extent that poor people do. So you don't need rich people offering therapy to the poor people. You need to,
You go the other way too, I think, where people, their opinion, if they're from a lower status, if you will, their opinions aren't heard either. So I guess there might be a dynamic there. I've never been a therapist, obviously, but there might be a problem there if the person goes in presenting their view on the world, which is their world and their perspective, and it is sort of dismissed as well, because no, you don't understand. You're a juice individual, so you don't get it. So this is how you should be feeling, and this is the problem. Take this drug, and you'll be okay. So intelligence is measured in different ways, if you know what I mean.
It's like
about how I feel, I don't know, I'm older, I'm 32, and a lot of this movement towards taking away the stuff from mental health and it being okay to say, I see a psych, or I suffer from this, or this type of thing. But I feel in some ways it takes away from just the normal interactions of community help because it's like, oh, now we're making this comfortable and this is what you go and do. Oh, you're not just having a shit day and I can talk to you. I'm going to say, hey, it's okay. You should go and see someone.
Yeah.
Like, you know, that like we're promoting that, and in a way it's not like, you know, go and get your nails done and go to the hairdresser. You know, like it's go and see someone about it, you know. You need to talk to someone who's professional, not just like a psych or something. So, you know, it's kind of like, and it's interesting because like everyone's moving towards that, and it's kind of like this socially appropriate thing to do, like of the generation. I feel it's like everyone's okay. It's okay to have feelings and da da da, but in this other way, it kind of takes away from the community.
And it's interesting because it links to something that you were saying in your group about the benefits to the person of the diagnosis. You know, it's that when you tell someone that you think they should get some professional help, it's almost like you're taking them seriously. And if you say, "Oh, just have a couple of drinks, or have a chat with a neighbor, or just go out, get your hair done," it can sound as though you're not taking them seriously, that you just think it's something superficial. You know, so there's that thing that kicks in that, oh, I think this person is in real trouble, therefore the appropriate response is to say that they should get professional help, which is showing them that I recognize they're in real distress. And that kind of works in the system as well. You know, it kind of not only making people feel as though they can't help, but also thinking that if I try to help, it will devalue the person and devalue their problem. And the other interesting thing, like there's these interesting arguments about people benefiting from these diagnoses, like it makes it feel as though their distress is being properly recognized. And the problem is that, and it does, when someone says I've got depression, then people take them seriously rather than, a bit grumpy. The problem is that when we send people to professional help, or someone receives a medical diagnosis, it opens them up to a whole load of interventions that they wouldn't have been opened up previously, which is medication. And the first thing that will happen to someone, particularly a poor person, is the moment they get referred to for professional help, they'll get medicated. It's guaranteed they'll be the first thing that will happen to them. But also it's the first thing the person wants. And it happens often with poor people. I'll talk about poor people. Poor people are dangerous because they've got nothing to lose. That's why we medicate them so heavily. That with poor people, you talk to poor people, you talk to them about going to the doctor, and they get really pissed off if the doctor doesn't give them a prescription. You know, if my doctor doesn't give me pills, then I'm being cheated. You know, that's kind of been started, that's now kind of fairly ingrained. So the person feels they're being taken seriously when they get pills, and they will get the medical diagnosis. They feel they're being recognized, and now stigma is being removed, and people can now talk about their depression and their schizophrenia. Actually, not schizophrenia. We haven't quite destigmatized that. We don't get anyone, do we, coming on and say, I just want to talk about my schizophrenia, on telly, a celebrity. Everyone will just go, okay, we're going for a break. Get him offset, So people talk about their depression, talk about their anxiety disorders and so on. That's all good and dandy now. And what we aren't talking about is the danger and harm that puts people in when they get these diagnoses, and what sounds like a good thing, that someone gets the recognition they need and the help that they get, the help that they deserve. It opens them up to all these. That's my doctor calling me. It opens my psychiatrist. Got to go in for another session. It opens them up to all of these really dangerous interventions, and they are dangerous interventions. These drugs are really dangerous. They're really powerful drugs, and people don't realize.
How are you going to change the mindset of people thinking, well, I need drugs, I need that recognition that I have something wrong with me? How are you going to change that?
Do what we did very effectively with the COVID vaccine. just put a few stats out there, and then no one will take, give them some stats saying, 1 in 250,000 will die from this, and then no one will touch it with a barge pole. I think the public would very quickly wean themselves off a lot of medications. You have to be careful because there's medications that people need, but there are a lot that they don't. Once you release the statistics on, no one look, there's a reason you open that patient information leaflet and, you get your packet of Panadol and you pick this thing in that says, you could die if you take this, and no one takes any attention because it's just blasé. It's not properly communicating the risks to patients. Drug companies have a very careful, planned way of informing patients of risk. They do it in a way that's not going to interfere with the patient taking the drug. And it's also the medical profession does this as well. They make sure that they deliver information on risk in a way that doesn't, that ensures compliance with the patient. You tell a patient you could die if you take this drug, they're not going to take the drug. So then you have to tell them about the risk in a way that isn't going to put them off taking the drug. I think we just need to communicate the risk more effectively, and then think people, they're not stupid, they'll, actually, that's not true, smoking. I don't know.
I remember years ago I had some stitches in my head, and this doctor, I was only a young fella, and the doctor said, I'll give you some anesthetic, but he had to give me a warning that I can't remember his statistics, but he said 1 in whatever, so many people, something or other. And I said, does that mean they die? And he said, yeah, it has been known, it can kill people. And I said, well, then don't give me any. And he was sort of taken aback by it, and he said, you want me to stitch you up without anesthetic? I said, well, not particularly, but I don't want to die either, so I guess we'll just stitch without the anesthetic. He said, well, it's going to hurt. And I said, so is death, I assume. So we'll just go with the pain with the stitches. So I think other times I've been to the docs and expressed that I wasn't doing so well. It was just life events, as you're saying, and I do believe what you're saying in relation to. I don't think mental health is a diagnosis. I think it is just a response to events in life. So I don't think it's abnormal. I think it's expected, if you know what I mean. So I think we have to be careful when we're trying to treat normal reactions to a thing. And they've both times said, well, I can give you some medication. And one of the conversations was that the world has gone a bit nuts, from my view. And that others will disagree and just say I'm individually nuts. I appreciate that perspective too. But the psych actually said, I agree. Yes, everything you're saying is valid. Yes, these things are happening. It is problematic. And I said, okay, so what's the solution? Because that's the question we always ask the psychologists. And they said, well, we can give you some medication. Now, I said, why is that? I said, well, we will help you deal with all of these things that are happening in the world. And my response was, but you've just agreed with me that these things are real, though. It's not he can be blunt and tell me if it's me being, some sort of cognitive distortion laid on me, I'll address that. And they said, no, it's true. I said, well, you want to medicate me? I said, why don't you just do me a favor and crush all the tablets and put it in the water supply and then let me know the day you're delivering it and I won't drink it. Wouldn't that be more productive? Why medicate me? Let's fix the problem. So I see what you're saying in regards to that the medication is the go-to for all of the issues. I don't agree with it either. And
that's commonly the reaction. They just think, well, there's nothing you can do about the horrors and insanity of the world. So here's some medication to help you cope with it, until you don't have to anymore.
I think that's the danger of retracting thought. I mean, ideally, being in that cognitive side of our brains, we are addressing problems, we're problem solving, and that's what we do well. So instead of medicating people, why don't we just get together and collectively try and resolve the problem?
Exactly. Yeah.
It goes away.
And I think, that's what psychologists should be doing. They should be referring people to support groups, advocacy groups, social action groups. When you tell people what the problem is, and the people often know, you knew, and poor people know. Poor people know it's because they haven't got a job, they've got no money, and their housing stinks, and the community is violent. They know these are the things that cause them stress. They know it's not their brain. But no one is helping them work collectively with each other. No one's saying, right, form into a group. Psychologists are saying you should be working with your neighbors. I know a lot of other people, all the other people who come in to see me. Why don't you, I'm encouraging them to form into a social action group and take action. And we can't individually, we can collectively. But, that individualizing approach to mental illness kind of prevents that. the one thing about the danger, the real problem about the medication stuff is that I mean, every medication, every medicine is poison because it can all kill you. Food's poison. Food can kill you if you take the wrong dose. You know, the problem is no one tells you about risk benefit. Like they don't tell you that. You know, they'll give you the risk and then they'll say, well, you know, but I think you need this because otherwise you've been, you know, they say serious harm. What they don't tell you is it's speculative, that the drug is experimental. They never tell you that. So when they say like this drug could, you could try and commit suicide if you take this drug. They don't say, and the drug is experimental. We don't know how it works. We don't know if it's going to help you. And if it does help you, we don't know why. We think it might just be the fact that you think it's going to help you. So it's going to. So they don't give people the proper information. And that's the kicker. When people are told that this is an experimental drug, then I think you'll find people like Robbie, like most people aren't like you, thank God. But, you know, if it was an experimental anesthetic, most of us probably would say, no, give me something that actually is known to work. And that's what, it's shocking that in the mental health field, that's where we're at. We have drugs that are experimental to treat an illness that we don't know even exists. And people make a huge amount of money from it. And it's just...
I mean, Paul, the drugs are just numbing people, aren't they? I mean, the drugs are just, okay, numbing you enough that you're not going to worry about the problems. So there you go.
Yeah. Which is the poison, that's what poison does, you know, and people think it's helping them, but they don't understand that's actually poison. That's the effect of taking a poison, which is mean you're feeling done. Yeah. And, you know, it doesn't actually, it dulls the psychological pain for some people, but actually you need that pain. You need your wits around you, particularly if you're poor, because you need to...
You need to care to change things.
Yeah, you need to get angry.
Yeah.
And angry is moral anger is a positive emotion. But you also need to feel anxiety. You need to feel depression to alert you to the problems. Mm. If you're so dull, you go to work even though it's grinding you down.
Yeah.
You know, you can't recognize what it is that's destroying you anymore because you've been dulled to it all. And our emotions are a response to things, you know, and anxiety is a response to, you know, a stress in the environment. And we just need to find what that stress is and remove that stress. And if we can't do it individually, we need to get together with a whole load of other people if they're all experiencing that thing as well. And they are. Poverty, unemployment, poor housing, violence, discrimination, social exclusion. We've known for 200 years or more that these are the things that cause poor mental health. And every one of them we can fix. You know?
I think I've got something interesting with those, say, psychometric evaluations too. When you answer questions in relation to depressed mood, they might say things like, it comes down to it's bad luck. Well, and the next statement maybe to choose from that is, I'm in control of the outcomes of my life. So one is going to indicate that you are not able to identify that you can make changes and bring yourself out of a certain feeling or emotion. But when you have a look at all those questions that you can answer, and even myself, I can answer them in a way that I know I'm responsible for the things that happen to me to a certain extent. And I know that I have a portion of responsibility in all of it, absolutely. But you asked me that question, which comes down to what can I do to change, say, corruption in government or the way that you're talking about these social justice issues that do exist. And I feel helpless and powerless. So why is it that I live in a way that I'm successful with business? I own my own home and everything else. I have no debt. I'm successful. And I do that by being resilient and pushing through with my own belief structures, which is positive, optimistic, if you will, even when I shouldn't be. And still, when you ask me that question in relation to how can I change this powerful entity that is abusive, oppressive, and I don't know. I feel like I'm helpless. There's nothing you can do. I'm willing to concede that can't be fixed. So even in someone that isn't depressed, for my own diagnosis, if that means anything, then I still feel the pressures or the depression in relation to that's too big to fix. I appreciate what you're saying, and I agree with you. I think that's revolutionary. It probably isn't, but to me it is. That you're saying that we should be pushing people towards advocacy groups. That's a really positive way to move forward in psychology. Thanks for sharing that. How can we fix that power? How can we fix it?
We're doing it right now. Come on. Talking about, we're all going to turn into Pauls, and we're all going to be out there as psychologists sending people to support groups. Like,
then you'll be completely
the world right here, Robbie. Come on.
Then no one will listen to you unless they're forced to, because it's a core unit on the degree. But I think the simple things, if you ask lawyers, okay, some lawyers will be disaffected after a career, meaningless career, but you ask people to go into law or go into political science, they study political science, they go into politics, they become political advisors. You ask them, and they haven't lost that belief. They're actually going into a job because they think they can make a difference. And people who go into law, they go in thinking that they can make a difference to people's lives. Think of what effect it would have on us as psychologists if we also studied law and studied politics, and study economics and study these big things that were about big social processes and, could result in big social change and social justice and all the rest of it. If we had that grounding, I wonder if we would feel so disempowered, because it's clear that lawyers don't feel disempowered by the system. They take it on a regular basis. The good ones do. So I'm wondering if it's just a sign of our inadequate training that we feel completely unable to deal with these big things. So we stick with the small stuff as psychologists, even when we learn that the big things are the things that cause the problems. We kind of block it out and just say, well, I'll just help this individual cope. What if we had that other training? Maybe we would think differently. Someone says, like, I've been discriminated against by my boss, and like they're multimillionaire and they're telling me that they're going to sack me. Bit of legal training, you jump in there, wouldn't you? You just go, oh, right, screw the medications. Right, tell you what you need to do. Here's your rights. This is where you go. This is who to talk to. We'll take them to court. We'll sue them. They can't do it. We'll fix it. I'll talk to a psychologist and say, oh, my boss is discriminating. The psychologist going, oh, how do you feel about that? What can you do? What do you think you can do to help the situation? And it's our training. It's just...
yes and no with that one, Paul. I studied law originally.
Oh.
So I would, so I might be able to add some, well, it's not much, it's qualitative research. I studied law originally with that exact thing, coming from a difficult childhood and making a lot of mistakes, but also the interactions with law enforcement, or the executive arms of government, if you will. You're exposed to that level of corruption. The more time you spend in something, you find you're with more people, numbers game, you'll eventually find the bad ones. So the negative or adverse effects I experienced as that was pretty bad. I had to deal with all that, and I wasn't right, and there was no closure. That's a loose term to use, but so I decided to go into law because I was going to advocate, and I can construct a pretty persuasive argument. But through the law degree itself, I often put my camera on, which is my own little, which my cover's blown now, but it's my own usual experiment I run. So I'll speak in a certain way, which sounds intelligent, and it's probably just a big facade. But then I put the camera on, a lot of people will go, whoa, didn't expect that to have a brain. So I do that just my own personal, sorry to use you all as research with their subjects, but it also challenges my view on how I see my social self as well, if you will, differently without the face. But getting back to the point, the interactions I had with the law school with the camera off, for example, and I might mention names because I'm not suggesting the person is bad, of course, but they mentioned, the lecturer mentioned facial hair. Now, the conversation was on transgenderism and a man that went to court advocating for something, but he was wearing fishnet stockings and a skirt. I'm an older generation, so to me that just blew my mind. I was like, "You serious?" But of course, it's normal. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it either, but just my perspective. So then the conversation went on about the discrimination and so on, which was fine, and went down the avenue you would expect it to. And then the lecturer said, as long as no one's got facial hair, I mean, one thing you can't have is a beard, surely. I hope no one's got a beard, have they? I was so close to pushing the button and saying, yes, let's have that conversation. But I thought, that's going to end in bad grades. And so I didn't go down that path. And of course, that's just my perception. It might not have. But when I went to court on a few personal matters, and one was in relation to a separation, the judge themselves said it would be very unlikely, in my view, that you would experience fear because you are a large male. I can't get into the fallacy of that. And I brought that up, of course. I said, well, that's a fallacious comment. Can you provide any evidence that suggests that large people don't experience fear? It was as if, the headlights went on and he was just standing in the middle of the road in the dark. And I think, again, that was because he could see my face. And then those words come out, which wasn't expected. So I left law because I found it was not for me. So I think you're right that there are people who can go into that profession that can have success, but they have to conform still to what's expected. You have to turn up in the suit, you have to have a shaven face, look like an underwear model, and present your arguments as if you've just come out of Harvard on the day. If you go in there speaking the truth with a well-constructed logical argument, which has legal logic to it as well, and it's solid, backed up with cases and case law and everything else, and interpreted correctly, it doesn't really matter. They're going to shut you down by making the most ridiculous comments based on the fact that they have power to oppress you anyway. Yeah. And there's very little you can do, by the way, unless you've got a lot of money. So you can appeal, but that's expensive.
I think that takes us back to, interestingly, to this point about, power inequalities being bad for therapeutic relationships, and how psychologists have power that can sometimes interfere. I think often interfere in their ability to help people when they've got more power than their client. But here it would be a case of point, so that should tell us what we should be doing, what psychologists should be doing. They've got the social status, they've got the power. They don't look like bikies, They are the ones, they are the 30-something, I know all these stereotypes around them, but, they fit that professional mode. They have a bit of social status. Those are the ones we need to turn them around and say, right, no, look in that direction. Don't look down at the individual. Think of working with individuals. We need you to talk to those guys over there, the people in the corporations, the people in government. That's where you should be talking, and use all of your skill of diagnosing people for being mentally disordered. Use it on them, all right? And let the low status, poorer people do the therapeutic work, which is the helping, because the politicians aren't going to listen to the poor people unless they kind of, all join together. So let the hairdressers and the shopkeepers and the natural support givers do the psychological work with the recognition. So that'd be like we're completely misusing our status. We're talking to the wrong people.
Can I jump in here, Paul, and just add that I do believe training for hairdressers now involves a psychology component.
Oh.
I have been told. I can't verify that absolutely, but I believe that training for hairdressers now involves some psychology training.
We should look into this. By we, I mean you. And then you tell me, I will try and look into it, but I'd love it if you looked into it. What's interesting here, there's this first aid, psychological first aid stuff that, people are putting on this training for people who are sort of first line workers in terms of psychological support givers, but not recognized as it, and they don't have the qualification. So they're giving these short courses to people, training into like psychological first aid. Extremely unpopular in the psychology profession by the
it's diffusing power, isn't it? It's letting the little people into a secret almost, and I understand why that would be seen as a problem. But, I agree completely with you, what you're saying about the people with the perceived power, like, the clinic, clinical psychologist, etc., should be the ones advocating for change in society. Absolutely.
I don't see why we can't not why we can't not be that. Like, okay, am I not like, okay, let's say I'm a clinical psych, right? It's my choice whether I take a heap of clients on each day, like doctors do currently, or if I take less clients on each day and then go, I'm actually going to figure out what their issues are and try and actually help them to solve their actual problems, like housing or da-da-da, like how can I help you? And hey, I might have multiple clients that like have a similar problem. And then like, that's my own.
From a money-making point of view, there's a lot of people out there, trained professionals, they're doing this profession to make a lot of money, yes, they're also doing it to help people, but they're doing it, they're paying for an expensive degree and they want to make a lot of money. You don't make a lot of money not seeing a lot of people.
Yeah, but you also don't need many people to make real change. It only takes a few people to band together to create social change.
But we also intervene and say, bugger what you want. Like you might not like doing statistics. Well, tough. You're going to have to do statistics. I mean, that's what we do. So if we got people who want to make money, and it's true. I mean, we all kind of do. I mean, that's why we're doing an accredited degree rather than a non-accredited one, probably. But, there are people who just want to make a good living out of it. Why do we have to deliver psychology training to enable them to do that? Because we don't do it in any other regard. We say, I want to become a psychologist, but I don't want to do statistics. Well, tough. You're going to have to learn statistics. We don't care. If you want to be a psychologist, you're going to have to learn this stuff. So we could do the same. You can say, I don't care if you just want to make money, that you have to do a day's advocacy work every week. That if you want to be a psychologist, that's what you have to do. And some professions do that. We can just dictate. As a profession, we can say, sod you have to do it. If you want to be called a psychologist, you have to do this work. And I think, Michaela, you're right. I think it's just called to balance. I push things to extreme on the arguments, but I think when they come back through proper discussion, it comes to a balance when you do your individual work and you do your political lobbying, your community work and community engagement. Many psychologists do this, but it's not something that they have to do. I think we just say you have to do it. Mm. And I think there's important that individual work is important, because the ideal social activist is the person who creates social change but doesn't make you feel bad when you're with them. That there's something personable about them. Oh, recording run out of space. Oh, Jesus, we've gone on, haven't we? Right, so I've got to stop recording. So now I'll say something that makes sense and the people not here will get annoyed. There's balance. We just need to balance this out. We do have skills that are really nice skills to have working with individuals that make people feel better about themselves as individuals. I think that's fabulous if we can also engage in some social action and change at the same time.
I'm doing this degree so they'll listen. I'm not suggesting I'm revolutionary, but I've had a lot of things that I've written in the past when I've tried to change certain little aspects of government or power in some way, and wrongdoings, I guess is a better word for it. And one of the letters I wrote once, I believed it was correct. It was completely dismissed, quite derogatory. And I went to a solicitor, and the solicitor read it, and he said, "Did you write this?" I said, "Yeah." And I said, "Look, I'm going to just put my letterhead on the top of it, copy and paste your words and send it again." And I wasn't really happy with paying him $1,000 for that. You can appreciate why. But at the same token, it was successful. And he kind of did it to show that I was on the right track, but it also pointed out how ridiculous it is that you would have to go through so much trouble, time and effort and money just to have the same outcome. So I know I've fallen into that trap, but I don't mean to because I am learning a lot, obviously, but I'm doing this just so when I say something, they'll actually give it some credibility or some weight.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous in my view.
No, it's smart. It's smart. It's exactly why I went into it. Sadly, I found out that the day I can't call myself a psychologist because I refuse to join the professional body, and they've got a protection on the title, but they can't say, anyway. So in the UK I could. So I did my PhD, recognised as a psychologist, proper, doctor, not proper doctor, but I can call myself a doctor. Went to the bank, thinking I just want to cement this into the letterheads, and want it on my credit card so that for that status thing. So I went to the bank. The first thing I did after I got my PhD, went to the bank and I said, I'd like to change my name on my account. They said, yes. What would you change it to? I said, doctor. And they said, have you got any paperwork to show that you're a doctor? And I'd only just been given the doctorate. So I said, no, I haven't got anything yet. And they went, oh, that's all right, you call yourself what you like. And they put doctor on my credit card. I spent 4 years and God knows how much money training to be a psychologist so I could be called a doctor. And my aim was to go to the bank to get it on my credit card to get the social status, and I could have done it all along. They didn't care. Anyway, on that helpful anecdote for your professional development, we better go. I've got to mark your work, and it's going to be much harder now. I realise you're decent human beings, but still, I'm a professional. I can be cruel.
Say that. Disregard everything I said, then, if that's the case. You should have told me before we had the class.
No, Robbie, if I mark your work, I'll just be remembering this is a dangerous, bikey.
Yeah, bearded, dangerous, bikey.
Yeah.
Intelligence who's trying to pretend he belongs. Absolutely. Imposter.
That's it.
Look at the plagiarism.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks so much for taking extra time with me. I get way too much value out of this.
Sorry, I know we're about to go. Can I just add one thing?
Yeah.
That, like the video where you were like, doing a degree in psychology doesn't make you better at helping people. I'm like in my second year, I think. Or maybe, yeah, I'm in my second. I do it part-time, so I don't know exactly. But like, that gave me so much more credibility for the uni and you as a lecturer. I was like, I might actually, like, they have more merit now. Like, usually people in positions of power, they never say stuff like that. Like, it didn't make me question me doing my degree. I was just like, I'm going to write that in my, like, evaluation, just so you know. But I just thought that was fantastic. I really liked that, being like, you know what you're doing? It doesn't even work. What do you think about that? I thought it was fantastic. I loved it. It's the first time in the whole degree that happened. It was great.
I can't take up way too much of your time. Think about, which is not like my clever way of saying I'm busy, I want to go, but think about that stuff about the therapeutic relationship and someone having power of their client and how it interferes with the helping relationship. Education is a helping relationship. It's a social relationship that is screwed up by power inequalities. And what we find is peer-led learning is as effective or more. We find this all over the place, apart from brain surgery. But peer-led learning, where, you don't need a professional there. You just have, people with diagnosis of mental illness get together, help each other out. And students in education, students get together, help each other out. That learning is more effective. And what we find is that when a student says to another student something, then a student will be more prepared to learn from a fellow student than they will from a tutor, because of that power inequality just interferes with the learning process. It's like, who are you to have the authority over me, to tell me what to think and how to think? There's always a kickback when people, I get it all the time on this unit. There'll be kickback. Who the hell are you to get me to think this way? I'm not thinking that way, brainwashing me. When you lower the inequalities, it becomes potentially much more effective. And look at how your tutors use authority. We'll come to this on the social relations week when we look at social power. Think about the power that tutors use to get you to do the things they want you to do. And it's interesting. Do they use their status? Do they use their expertise? Do they use their role? Do they try to be nice and likable? And swear a little bit so they sound like one of yous, And what's effective? And you'll see the effective teachers pretending to like their students, and that's the way they get to be effective. That's what I do. But it's that same game, you know, it's that same, as you say, Michaela, it's that once
I
you,
think it works in both ways, though. I think I've seen lecturers, like, I reckon, like, I've made lecturers like doing their job more because I'm enjoying what I'm learning, right? It makes sense if I was in that position. It's like, if I came into a tutorial and everyone has the camera off and there's one kid with their camera on actually talking to me, that's going to make my tutorial much more interesting than thinking I'm talking to a whole lot of blank screens, right? So I think it's like both in both ways, like, you know, interconnected. It's back to the self, right?
And
just having,
it's a win-win, Michaela. You know, everyone's gaining, everyone's winning, you know, everyone's feeling heard and valued.
Yeah. Anyway, I've got to go. So
yeah. I think we should all go. But it's a good point to end on.
Thank you so much. That was great.
I'll go and cut some hair now.
We'll all be lined up at your place, hey? Yeah.
Thanks, everyone. You're just letting me hang on like a nana, aren't you? Until like. Yeah. Thanks, Lisa.
Bye.